sitting in the background and doing a lot of great work, but I really feel good when I'm publicly recognized.
We are doing something a little bit different here today, and we have a wonderful guest. Can't say enough good things about today's guest, Elisa Janson Jones. She is an entrepreneur, she's an author, she's an educator, she's the founder of the International Music Educator Summit, and I discovered her through one of my friends in the podcasting world, and someone I actually went to college with, Andrew Hitz, and I think I emailed her right after listening to her episode. I was walking down Battery Street here in San Francisco, and I made a guest suggestion. Not me, but somebody else. And we struck up an email correspondence, and it led to us chatting. Elisa put this conversation out on her podcast. Here it is coming out on mine. And it's an honest, raw, different kind of episode. We talk about our mutual successes and failures, our careers, and just careers in general evolving over the years for people taking charge of your own life. Yes, there is crying on the podcast. I think it's the first time that that's happened on Contrabass Conversations. I think I have to go back and look, but it's just a lot of fun and really meaningful conversation. And I hope we can get a chance to do it again soon. Quick shout out at the top to our sponsors, D'Addario Strings, Upton Bass, Steve Swan String Bass, Modacity, Colstein Music, and A440 Violin Shop. More on them later, but here is today's guest, the wonderful Elisa Janson Jones. So you just got back from South Dakota?
Yeah, you were there too. You were in Bismarck, right?
Well, I'm actually in South Dakota right now. I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So where I'm from. So I'm visiting mom and my brother's in town. And it was so random because I got like, Elisa's in South Dakota, but you were in Western South Dakota, right?
Yeah.
Okay, right. The South Dakota that you go tour, not so much where I'm from, but you did Badlands and Black Hills and all that?
Yeah, it was super fun. I'd never been up there before. And we dropped my daughter off in Greeley for a marching band camp and then took my two little boys to go do the touring stuff. So I was like, we're already up there, right? Like most of the way.
Yeah, it's still a haul from Greeley to South Dakota, though, isn't it? I remember driving that like long eastern Colorado chunk back to South Dakota or Nebraska or however you decide to do it.
Yeah, we went up through Cheyenne and up through Wyoming, and we stayed in Hot Springs.
Oh, so yeah.
Go like all the way up to Rapid City.
I did exactly what you did. My wife's from Albuquerque, and for years we were living in Chicago, and we go visit family in South Dakota right here, and then we would drive to Hot Springs, which is an easy drive. It's like 5.5 hours. And then Hot Springs, we go all the way to Albuquerque, which is a really funky drive. It's like these rural Wyoming roads, and you cut through this town called Lusk, Wyoming, which is like real hardcore small town Wyoming. Yeah. And finally catch around Cheyenne, I think. You catch I-25 and head south.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yep. Did you drive? Okay, so you drove this whole thing. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. It was awesome though, because I mean, we're spoiled with mountains here. And like I live 10 minutes from the Colorado National Monument, if that. So we've got like big red rock cliffs on one side of us. And then we've got the Book Cliffs, which are like these, light tan, white hills. And then we live by the biggest flat top mountain in the world. So we can be at 11,000 feet in an hour from our house.
Wow. So, I don't know that part of Colorado at all. I know Denver, I know Aspen, and then I know Utah, which I know you're from, like a little tiny bit, but I don't even know if I've been, you're in Grand Junction. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if I may have driven through there, but I don't have a memory of it.
Yeah, that's how most people do it. They just drive through on I-70 and then say, oh yeah, I've been there. And it's like, no, you haven't. You have to get like off I-70 and down onto Main Street. And like, it's a very outdoor recreation town without all the massive touristy stuff like Moab.
Okay. Wow. That's cool. Yeah, I'd love to explore more of Colorado. It's been far, far too long. Just these journeys that Courtney and I would take down to Albuquerque. We had friends in some one of those suburban Denver towns, Aurora or something like that. So we'd stay in Denver for a day or two and then head down to Albuquerque. But love Colorado.
Me too.
It's good to chat with you. It was so fun to hear you on Andrew's podcast. And I was walking along the North Waterfront in San Francisco where I live, and I'm just like listening. I'm like, wow, at least should totally connect. And then of course, like a podcasting fool, I recommended somebody you already had on your show. I should have scrolled back, but I thought, oh, you got to talk to Scott Lang. But you should talk to Scott Lang again because he's up to all sorts of new things.
Oh yeah, I do need to get him back on. But yeah, I talk to Scott on occasion. We pick each other's brains. We're of a similar entrepreneurial kind of mind, except I think people should have to pay for things and he thinks they should get them for free. We're different on that.
That's true. Actually, that's a good observation. I was literally emailing Scott Lang like 45 minutes ago. So it's a small, it's a small world for sure.
Don't tell him what I said about him though, but he is a stunning individual and just one of my favorite people. So.
And then I'm listening to your podcast yesterday. You probably have a process, but I love when someone's got a lot out there about them. And then you got your podcast and all your other projects you do. But I listen to the last podcast and then I go back and I listen to the very first podcast. And then randomly, pop in between. But your last one, at least the last one you published, and I'm forgetting the woman's name, but she teaches in Greenwich High School, I think, in Connecticut.
Yeah, Barbara.
Okay, Barbara. So the quote you have at the beginning is something near and dear to my heart. And I can't talk about it too much because I know everybody's going to press stop because they're so sick of me hearing me talk about it. But you were talking about Ableton Live and Ableton Push and your son. Am I right? Getting into that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Okay. So, and then I listened to the episode. I realized that's not necessarily your jam, but that's something you're exploring in the podcast. But it was so interesting because that's like, sort of been my world, at least at parts of times in my life. So I thought it was really a fascinating discussion. It's really cool that you're exploring that.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hang on just one sec while I check your sound?
Yeah. Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Am I too hot? I can turn it down.
No, you're totally fine.
I'm good. Okay.
I wasn't getting your audio, but I figured it out. I have a big, I learned really early in this podcasting thing to always have a backup, which is why I like to use Zoom because it will auto record for me. And then always double check your sound.
Yeah, smart.
But you're recording right now?
No, I'm not recording. I am. Am I recording? Maybe I am recording. No, I'm not recording. I see you're recording, so I didn't. When I'm talking with a professional, I don't worry about it. Nice. But usually, I'm talking to somebody who's done this for the very first time. So I love that you use Zoom. I haven't gotten into Zoom mainly because. I don't know why I haven't. Actually, I probably should. Now that I don't really have a good reason. Because I love seeing the other person. Maybe it's the barrier to entry, although there is no barrier to entry with Zoom. But I don't know. I guess I've been doing it too long, and I've just sort of got a way I do it.
What do you normally use? Skype?
Yeah, well, what I'm trying to do these days, with rare exceptions, is do everything live. If at all possible. And so it means I don't talk to people necessarily for 6 months or 12 months or maybe ever. And I still do Skype, FaceTime. I've even done Facebook Messenger video and I record on my end. But I'm trying to do as much live as I can because it's more fun.
Yeah, I could see that. I was on a live one in Texas back in January, February. I went to TMEA and the Beyond the Clef podcast was there. And they were like, oh my God, we want to get you on. Want to get you on. And so I had 30 seconds to prepare to go live and was like, okay.
Well, okay. So now I have to ask, because I was also at TMEA. It's a very small world. And I remember was that taking place in the exhibits or was that else? Okay. I wonder if I walked by that setup because I can't imagine there were very many podcasting setups on the TMEA exhibit floor, but I definitely walked by one and I was kind of giving him I was looking over all the gear and I asked him a few questions and I was, it's got to be the same. I can't imagine there was more than one live podcasting setup on the floor. Maybe, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and they were super fancy. I'm so very into minimalism and streamlining everything and make it as easy as possible, which is why even though I use Zoom, Zoom, as you saw, is super, super easy to use. You just send the person the link and they log in. And then that's my backup recording. And then I use Camtasia, which is a screen capture. and editing software. So I capture it all and then it's already in the editor. Whereas when I was first learning about podcasting, it was like, you need to get this software and this software and this software and like step by step by step. And I'm like, yeah, it can be easier.
It can definitely be easier. And that's cool that you use Camtasia. So are you on a PC if you're using Camtasia, or I'm just curious because I think I use ScreenFlow for sort of similar purposes, which is Mac only. So I've always heard Camtasia recommended as a PC alternative, although I think it's also for Mac.
Yeah, I have it on both. Right now I'm on a PC, but I also have a MacBook and I have it installed on my MacBook as well. So I could be using that. This one was just more convenient.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the thing about running an online conference. I have a lot of equipment nowadays.
Yeah, I'm sure that you can put to good use, which is great. Yeah, and Zoom is such a great. I use it. I always associate it with meetings, which so I've used it a lot. And I know people that use it for podcasts. I should, as I'm talking right now, I should just start using it. What's wrong with me? Because what I like is the visual connection like this. That's what I don't like about some other services like Ringer. Sorry, Ringer, you're good, but it's a podcast, but you lose the visual. And then I've always just jerry-rigged like Skype, using various screencast or on the Mac, we have a program we can use it for, or FaceTime sometimes. I just put out like whatever's easiest for them. But I think I'd get better audio if I just asked that everybody use Zoom. So maybe I should start doing that.
Yeah, I think the face-to-face thing is so important. And my podcast is entirely audio right now. I've been toying with the idea of doing some video stuff, but we'll probably keep it audio because not everybody feels as comfortable like having their face recorded. I certainly don't feel comfortable having my face recorded, especially not now since I have no hair. And I'm extremely self-conscious, if I'm allowed to say that. But it is nice to be able to like see your face and feel connected to you and feel like we're actually having a conversation. I've actually started, because so many of my presenters who are all over the world, they're becoming my friends because I end up talking to them so much and coaching them through how to do their webinar and all of this. So we just have started having like online coffee sessions, like where 3 or 4 of us will Zoom in together and drink and chat, and you feel still connected. I mean, there's something awesome about that in-person connection, but there's the leveraging of the virtual world as well. So
that's for sure. And that's why I can't imagine I'll ever not stop doing remote, because, I'm chatting after chatting with you, which I've been looking forward to. I'm chatting with Bert Witzel, who's the new bass member of the Indianapolis Symphony. And then I had an interview, but they canceled, which is fine because I want to go have fun at my childhood home with somebody in Australia. And, those are the sort of things. But I do love, I was at this bass conference a couple of weeks ago, and
yeah, I saw it was awesome.
Yeah, well, that's well, it was a lot of fun, though I was pretty tired after that week, but that's a perfect place for doing things live. And I recorded a couple of videos, but I think I'm going to move into, when I do things live like that, just record the video, even if I never use it. I don't know what, I feel like I don't really, content like this, I like to listen to an audio form. So I'm not super jazzed to watch 2 people just talking, but I know that some people are. I don't know. I figure if I'm at a live event, there's no real harm. It's just going on an SD card. And if I use it, great. If not, whatever.
Nice. I should do that at one of the next conferences I'm going to. I'm actually speaking at a collegiate music educator conference in a couple of weeks in Oklahoma City, which I should probably prepare for. And yeah, maybe I'll try and do I love going to conferences and getting snippets of sound. Like I'll ask a bunch of questions and then compile those into an episode. I like the idea of video though. I have been toying with it.
Yeah, there's definitely power in that. That's something I'm trying to move more into. And that's part of why I got this Zoom Q8, this cool little camera. I don't know if you've played around with that, but it's a really nice, just portable. It's got good audio built in, and you can put a shotgun mic on if you want to. And it's just real simple little camera, but the video is good. And I'm trying to do more little quasi documentaries when I go to events, which I would say I am fairly bad at right now, but I'm getting better. And the only way to get better is to practice. So,
okay, what's your camera called?
It's called the Zoom Q8. And I'm a huge fan of Zoom. I'm talking through the Zoom H6, the audio interface, which I love to use when I'm at live events.
Nice. So
Yeah.
what do you want to talk about for our podcast today?
I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a good. That's a good. I'm not too worried because you're a person involved in so many different things, and I know we'll have a good conversation, and people will be along for the ride if it's a good conversation. So
good.
And what I'll definitely do is link up to your conversation with Andrew Hitz, because you dug deep into all kinds of things like the Music Education Summit, which happened since you talked with Andrew, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second International Music Education Summit online, right?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we could start with that.
Well, we could start with that. So it happened a couple of weeks ago. The problem is technology. Just technology. I mean, because people are not necessarily the problem. There were a couple of timing errors on the part of different presenters who didn't calculate their time zone correctly. Don't even get me started on the time zone thing. I want to just wipe out time zones entirely. We're in a digital age. Can we not just all be on the same time?
Oh, and I'm notorious for screwing that up. That's why we were talking about what time we were chatting, and I'm like, I got your message, and I was like, I'm sure I screwed that up, because I screw time zones up like nobody's business. In my own time zone, I screwed up. So yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, we're both Mountain Time, aren't we? Right now? No, you're on the East side, so you're Central.
I'm Central Time. Yeah, exactly. But I live normally in Pacific Time. So.
And I hate to admit it, but I have to double and triple check myself, and I run an international conference. You know what I mean? So, but the technology thing is just like, if we had 5G, it would not be a problem. But I had somebody who was on a cruise ship and wanted to still, talk on this. We had it was like a 4-person panel discussion kind of thing, 5-person panel discussion. So one was on a cruise ship and actually paid to get better internet connectivity. But that was the number one challenge, was the internet connectivity. And then I was all set up. I worked really hard the last few days, final push before the conference. And then I got up that morning. I had my, 3 computers and my backup computer, and then an extra monitor on each of those computers. And I was super you saw a picture of my battle station, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was impressive, right? Anyway, so I was already set to go, and there were last minute orders coming in, people joining, the first day. Everybody procrastinates anyway. And then all of a sudden I get all these messages, we're getting errors on your website. And I go over to my website and it's completely down. I'm like,
no.
What? Everything goes through the website. People know I trained everybody on how to access everything. Access is the number 2 thing, right? Content is number 1, but then how do you get people to access that content? And all the access points were through that one website. So I literally stopped for just 1 second and had to think. Do you know what I mean? And
I have been there.
I was just
not running an international conference, but I've been there. I can feel I can feel that emotion.
Yeah. And I mean, fortunately, I'm extremely resourceful. I'm really great at problem solving. But it was traumatic. I had worked so hard for a year to build this thing up. I'd been traveling all over to try and build this thing up. We had 300 people registered and ready to go, and presenters from across the globe. It's a big deal. I mean, once I'm at the 10,000 foot view, I can admit that it's a big deal. While I'm in it, it doesn't feel like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay. So website's down. I'm on the phone with my company, my hosting company, because it's all self-hosted. I self-build everything, which, by the way, I'm a music teacher, okay? I'm not. That is what I was trained to do. I'm a French horn player. I'm a conductor. I'm a music teacher. That is what I was trained to do, not build websites, okay? So I'm dealing with presenters and attendees, and I'm trying to get everybody figured out, and I'm simplifying everything and trying to get everybody connected, and I'm sending all these emails. And fortunately, 99% of the people were super graceful, extremely patient, very kind. extremely charitable. Like the outpouring of love from people while I was extremely stressed out was amazing. Like I had my friends who were all in New York at another conference, like sending me selfies, like, we're thinking about you, we're helping you, we're pushing for you. It was outstanding, but there were a few who were extremely pissed off. Anyway, so I was able to backdoor everything, and it turned out that the website was either hacked or there was some issue with the IP address, and it's gone. That website's completely demolished. I've had to completely rebuild from scratch. So now I've built 2 websites so that I have a backup.
Wow.
But the point is, like my whole life for 6 months, and maybe this is what we should talk about, is coming back from challenges and really realizing that you are the one in charge of your life.
A question I like to ask people on the podcast is, what advice would they give their 18-year-old self? And here's Barry Kolstein of Kolstein & Sons answering that very question.
I think as an 18-year-old and, or even in my early 20s coming into the shop, everything like that, a lot of it was laid out for me. There was a plan, that I was given a plan, which I often say I've done a good job, and I'm proud of what I've done with the shop, and I continue to be proud. But, I was given an opportunity, and I always respect self-made people, that weren't given that opportunity. It's what you do with the opportunity.
Barry has been providing bassists with opportunities through beautiful instruments, bows, cases, you name it. He's been doing this himself for 50 years, and the shop is celebrating their 70th year in business. Thank you so much for what you do, Barry. Check them out at Kolstein.com, and thank you for sponsoring the podcast. There is this mode in my practicing app, Modacity, which I totally love. It's called Deliberate Practice, and it's such a cool feature. Here's Modacity founder and CEO Mark Gelfo on how this works.
One of my pain points as a musician was like not really having a method to generate reliable improvement. And deliberate practice is like the scientific method for music practice. So what you do is you identify the one thing that you want to improve, be it articulation, intonation, emotion, comfort, whatever it is you want to improve, and brainstorm or choose one of the pre-suggested strategies for that area of improvement, and then test it out. Record yourself trying that strategy, listen back, and press yes, it worked, or no, it didn't work, to create that improvement.
It's such a clean way of tracking your progress. I do it every day, and it has done wonders for my bass playing and just my overall enthusiasm for music. You got to check it out. Modacity.co is the site, and if you go to our site, you can click through it and get a special offer for lifetime access for this app. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Modacity. Consistency among bass lines, consistency among the different products you offer, that's something that Upton Bass excels at. Here are Gary and Eric from Upton Bass on that topic.
Like continuity of product, which we have fabulous reputation. We've got great product across the marketplace.
Do you have seconds? No.
Right, yeah, exactly. No.
Seconds are in the dumpster.
For almost 20 years, Upton Bass has been delivering top-notch basses at every price point, consistency and continuity, like Gary said, across the line. And if the wood's not good, like Eric said, it goes in the dumpster. They are the real deal, made in America. Learn more at uptonbass.com, and thanks for sponsoring the podcast.
These last, and I might cry, Eric, because these last 6 months have just been so hard. It's been like, sorry, I'm really tired. But it's just been one challenge after another, like being massively sick and then still having to teach full time and trying to run my conference and having to take time off to, go to TMA and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then my kids getting sick, and then my husband being sick while I'm in LA trying to deal with the NAMM show. And then my dad dies, and then my grandma dies, and I'm having to travel to Utah to go to multiple funerals. And then my conference goes down on the first day. And I just could not believe that this just keeps happening, And then just last week, my principal at my school emails me, and he's like, we don't have budget to hire you back. Wow. And so I'm just staring at my life like, where do I go from here,
Wow.
Sorry, Jason.
I'm so sorry. I'd heard about your dad, and my condolences and
Thanks.
boy, that's a rough 6 months.
Yeah, I might just cut this part out.
That's
I'm
completely,
such a baby.
It's completely fine.
But
We-
the
One
truth
would,
is
one would
that-
not know all that, from the outside. But I did read about your dad. I'm sorry about that, and everything. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, but I've decided that I'm in the midst of all of this. There are amazing and wonderful successes happening. Like getting to chat with you. Like that's awesome. I've been following your podcast from the time I started podcasting 2 years ago. And here I am talking to you. And then, talking to Andrew was a dream come true. He's such an outstanding individual, and then being able to go to TMEA and meet all these wonderful people. And I really have made friends all over the world and had huge successes alongside all of these huge challenges. So maybe that's what we should talk about.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, it's tough when it all piles up like that. Too, right? That's a rough. I remember when I started teaching, because I taught 7 years in the schools, and year one I was 3/5, so I was getting benefits, and I needed those benefits for my wife and I. I mean, that was why we'd gone back, and I was at the after party for our concert, which went great. It's like March, right? And I come home and there's a letter from my school saying I've been terminated. And I'm thinking, what? I was just there with the principal at this. I was thinking, and I've like I couldn't sleep all night. This is nothing like what you went through, but I remember just that feeling of like, talk about highs right into the lows. Then of course the next day it's one of these Illinois legally contractual, because I was part-time staff, so that I couldn't get tenure. It was one of those, they have to legally fire you and rehire you all the time, every single year. But I was like in this mad panic, thinking my life had spiraled, that was it. What was I going to do?
Yeah. And that's completely legitimate. We all hit times in our lives when we have to really open our eyes to what the situation actually is and what it merits of us. And I see this among music teachers a lot, because my first book was all about creating lifestyle and holistic wellness and stuff like that. A lot of entrepreneurial stuff, which you understand because you are an entrepreneur.
I read your book. It's very good. It's a great read. It's all sorts of like morning routines and that kind of thing. It's great.
Yeah, it's a couple years old now, and I'm kind of thinking I need to go through and do a new edit now that I've been through so much more life in just the last 2 years.
Sure.
But it was really written, the entrepreneurial perspective for music teachers. And as music teachers, and you experience this, I'm sure, we aren't trained in a lot of lifestyle stuff or even off the podium management stuff. When we graduate from college, we know how to teach bass. We know how to teach French horn. We know how to organize an ensemble and pick repertoire. And we know how sometimes we're taught classroom management. Were you taught classroom management?
No, not really. No.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're thrown into this career without the proper set of tools, which is one of the reasons why I started my podcast, was to try and help people get more tools. And we hit this point where we get fired. We get a student, trying to hit us in class. We get all of these we have to go to work sick because we don't have another sub day, because we can't afford the $150 to pay for a sub. So we go in sick. And we hit this breaking point so many times. And the question is, when do we break and decide that that's okay? And when do we re-strengthen and decide that's okay?
Yeah, it's how do you do that? I don't know. I'm struggling with that myself. It's a tough, and especially if we're talking about teaching, it's such talk about highs and lows, and especially now, moving from where I used to live in suburban Chicago to San Francisco, where you would think if you didn't live there, you'd think, oh, wow, teachers have it great, I'm sure, in the Bay Area. Not so much. In fact, San Francisco is, I might be wrong in the statistic, but it's one of the lowest paying big cities in the nation, if not the lowest. I think it's around Baltimore, maybe even a little less than Baltimore. And I don't know if anyone's checked the real estate in the Bay Area, but it's a little more than Baltimore. So, and then to make matters worse, it's a profession that's just constantly under attack, everywhere. But I see it so strongly in the Bay Area, and it's just, I don't know. I'm not doing that day to day anymore. I still think of myself as in education, but it's different what I'm doing now. But it is a tough thing the self-care is really challenging. That's something you talk about in your book too, like coming home and like being out of energy. It's like I'm going to go get a beer. I'm going to have a beer and like crash in front of the TV. And I can't tell you how, something Elisa talks about in her book, I'll link to it, but just, she talks about, trying to just have energy for yourself and for your life, to exercise, to eat well, and just to have energy outside of just what you do in that job. And that was so hard for me. I think those 7 years, I don't think I worked out once during the week. I mean, maybe in September when the weather was great and it was still light out and I came home and I wasn't living too far from my job. But most of the time I would just come back and I was exhausted, and I was the person you're describing. I would just crash, nothing. My life was just that stinking job and commuting to and from it.
How much do you think that appreciation for our craft comes into our likelihood of burnout? I know you talk to a lot of professional musicians who have similar challenges on the job. Maybe they aren't as appreciated as a professional musician. Maybe they, there's a lot of strikes that happen with professional orchestras and stuff because they are under poor management. How do a lot of them deal with it?
Well, I think the people that deal with it, that seem to deal with it the best, in my observation, are the people who always have a new project. Even if you're in the same job and week after week and month after month and year after year, the people that have that sparkle, they're doing something new. They're building some new movie concert, and they're trying something they've never done before. They're doing some sort of project incorporating who knows what. They're coming up with some sort of crazy dance exercises for their students. I think that those are the people that find ways to constantly change it up and shape and reshape it. So I've noticed that, and I've noticed that I have a great colleague in the bass world who's been in education sort of for years and years. His name's Barry Green. He wrote The Inner Game of Music, if you've ever read that. But
I've had him on the podcast.
Oh, get out of here. You've had Barry. Okay, so again, Jason, you got to go back and scroll before you start. Okay, I did not scroll fully. Well, so I was just at Barry's camp, and it's so cool to see Barry in his mid-70s with more creative energy and new ideas than many mid-20-year-olds that I would see teaching. I would talk to mid-20-year-olds that I would think of them as having the energy of someone in their late 60s, oh, well, I guess we're going to do this, and Barry's the polar opposite. So I don't know how you build that energy. I think for me, part of it is always having new experiences and going to conferences or taking in new things. Like I imagine your summit was like, or has been like, but I don't know, I constantly finding a way to refill that inspiration. That's a challenge. And I don't know how, that might be a hard thing to teach.
Yeah, I think it really is. I remember in my first marriage, years and years and years ago, I married my high school sweetheart, percussionist, fine individual. We're married 15 years, so that's successful, right? That's pretty good.
Sure.
But at one point, he said that he wanted to have a hobby that we could both do. And he's like, well, what are you interested in having a hobby? Because I was like, a hobby? I work at a music store. I teach music. I do music. And he's like, no, that's work. What's a hobby? Because he had this long list of hobbies that he wanted to get into. And so for years I was like, well, my hobby is my kids. Mm-hmm. My hobby is, but your hobby really isn't something that you necessarily do outside of work. It's something that you do that's strictly for you, that fulfills you. Don't you think?
Yeah, I do think. Do you think you can have a hobby? Well, I think, I think I have a few hobbies that have nothing to do with work. And then I think I have a few hobbies that do tie in kind of a cool way into my work. And yeah, I think it's hugely important. Like one of my hobbies, I know one of your hobbies is trail walking, since you have a site called Trails 365, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yep.
Okay.
That actually was before I even got back into teaching music. It's been an outdoorsy kind of life for me. Yeah.
Okay, so I would consider that a hobby. One of mine is long urban explorations. I go on, either myself and then my wife and I go on these 15, 20-mile walks through. We'll explore all the weird little nooks and crannies of San Francisco, or we'll walk across the Golden Gate Bridge and go through Marin County. Or we used to walk through how dangerous a neighborhood could we go into in Chicago before we felt totally terrified, which is I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it's something that we did. So that's definitely a hobby. Nothing to do with work, but it's like, where do you want to explore this Saturday? And that refilled my reservoirs too. And then I do have hobbies like arranging. I totally think of that as a hobby, but it would bleed over into my day job, obviously. This podcast was totally a hobby, and now it's what I do. You have a strong business background. I have ended up with a business, but that was I was just screwing around back 12 years ago. I never thought of, I don't think so, at least, of monetizing this or turning it into a chunk of what I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So some things that connect to what we do as a career, and some things that don't necessarily. But whatever it is that kind of lights our fire, I think we almost get that burned out of us in college, because we're so heavily dedicated to our career and our field of study and everything like that.
Yeah, I did an experiment a couple years ago. But I got a bachelor's in performance, master's in performance. Then I went back and got certified, and I went through, and I think I was going to write a blog post about this, which I never did. But what I did was I looked at all of my transcripts, and I looked at all the things I took, and I thought about what I've done in my life and what has been the most useful out of that, and what probably I haven't applied. Not that everything that we learn has to be applied but it's like, what have I made the most money from? What have I spent the most time doing? Well, my goodness, piano. I should have spent way more time on keyboard skills. I like teaching orchestra, teaching private bass lessons, arranging, all that kind of thing. Conducting, so much time conducting, singing, all these things that I wish, arranging too, so it's really interesting. And then all the like wacky web related things I've done, which I had nothing, I've taken zero things except like bumping around on YouTube, looking at things. So yeah, that was sort of an interesting experiment, just to think about like a music education, or at least what I had and what I have used.
Yeah, and there's really no need to stop learning either. And I think I cover that in my book. Like, continue to learn and to practice. I want to tell you about starting on ukulele, but a book that really helped me think about what you're talking about, which is looking at your past to kind of help determine your future, is Let It Fly by Pat Flynn.
Yeah, I've read that. It's
yeah,
great.
You have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And right at the beginning, he's like, okay, so before you start a new business or a new project or whatever, you need to do some looking at yourself. And he has two different tests. And one is where you go back and you look at every job that you've had, and you list all the things that you enjoyed about a job and the things that you found fulfilling. And then you list all the things you hated about a job. So now you're starting to see like what really feeds you. And doing that, I discovered that I really like recognition. Mm-hmm. I don't like necessarily I don't mind sitting in the background and doing a lot of great work, but I really feel good when I'm publicly recognized, And so the jobs where that never happened, I didn't have as enjoyable of an experience as in jobs that did. And then he also has the 5-year test. So he says, pretend that you're in an airport 5 years from now, and you run into somebody you haven't seen in 5 years, and they ask you where you are. and what you're doing with your life. And so you can go through and think, okay, 5 years from now, when I'm talking to my friend Jason in the airport, I'm going to be able to say that, I'm in the 7th year of my music education summit, and it's now a totally mainstream event. And, 3/4 of music educators in the world participate in it, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was just really, I can't believe that I was like in my mid-30s when I discovered that. I wish that everybody graduating from college or even from high school could have that opportunity to self-reflect.
This episode is brought to you by Steve Swan String Bass. And Steve travels far and wide here in the Western United States. Here's Steve on where he goes and what some of the benefits of being able to travel like that are.
You travel with it. You're going up to Oregon. You're going up to Seattle.
Up to Seattle,
yeah.
And back, out to Arizona, wherever people want to see a selection, they don't have options, or if I have a line on some basses I want to check out and maybe buy or trade, I have the option. That's the beauty of me not being tied to a workbench in a shop.
Steve works with some of the San Francisco Bay Area's best professional bass luthiers, people like Nathaniel Rich, Alex Friedman, and many others, to get basses playing beautifully. When someone comes to me asking where to look for a bass, whether they're a student or professional, or they're coming through town and they want to try out a great selection of basses, I always send them to Steve. Learn more at steveswanstringbass.com. And thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Steve.
Hey, Jason, this is Barry Green calling, the bass player from Cincinnati and then California. And now I'm back in Cincinnati, and we're having a lovely snowstorm right now on the 24th of March. Are you kidding me? Springtime. Anyway, I'm just checking in to talk about how cool not just D'Addario strings are, but the entire organization. I mean, like Lyris and all of the bosses there, they are so supportive of the arts, of music, what they do for music, the music programs around the world with the foundation, and supporting the artists and the many clinics that I have done as well for them and through them and with their support. They are the most amazing human beings. So when I play my D'Addario strings, I not only share music sounds, but I'm spreading the D'Addario message of benevolence and good fortune and dedication to music. I've always enjoyed the D'Addario strings because they're so universally cool. They work for orchestra playing, they work for solo playing. They have so many models that are possible, from a hybrid string for an orchestra player or a solo bass player. You get a little more edge with the hybrid. The mediums are great for most instruments, but I find that sometimes the instrument, not the strings, but the instrument needs a little help in the certain registers, and therefore it's like a prescription. It's kind of like a person. I mean, like if you're fat or if you're skinny, you're going to wear clothes that make you look better. And so if your bass has a nice high register and needs some help on the bottom, then you want something that helps enhance the bottom. So find the clothes. The cool thing about D'Addario is that they have a lot of clothes in their closet. And so we're going to take all those D'Addario strings out of the closet and fit it on our unique basses and get them all to look really, really cool. All right, Jason, I hope this is helpful. And I know D'Addario is helpful to the world. Bye.
We really should be constantly reinventing ourselves. Have you discovered this idea of constant reinvention of yourself?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think if we look at somebody like we were just talking about, Barry Green, there's somebody that I look up to as somebody who's done that, many times throughout his career, or somebody like Pat Flynn, who's done a lot, or some other people in the entrepreneurial world, Tim Ferriss, or I think you mentioned, oh, I'm blanking, Amy Porterfield, or some of these other people that are in the online business world, online. Elisa and I know these names probably 5% of the people listening, at least to my podcast, do, but they're good people to follow along with.
That's about right. Yep. I'll add links to the show notes on them.
Well, another person that I've got a lot of that has been helpful to me, Gretchen Rubin. She written several books, but something she talks about, I don't remember if I'm remembering the terminology, but it's like the 4 personalities. There's the obliger, there's the upholder, there's the something, and then there's the rebel. And my wife is convinced that I'm the rebel in that. And I think she's right, because I have had a lot of different jobs, but every time I get a job, it's like, as soon as I see the job, I want to get in. And then once I get the job, I want to get out, and I'm looking to get out. And I just don't like being told. I like doing things, but I don't like being told what to do. So I've started to accept that a little bit more the last few years. And
that's not rebellion. That is self-direction.
There we go. I like that. Yeah, there we go.
It's different. You have that natural entrepreneurial spirit where you are so self-directed that you don't have to have other people tell you what to do.
I think I get exasperated by the slowness of, I like the velocity of ideas. And as soon as I get it, and I've been on enough, I know you've been involved in different organizations. I've been on a lot of nonprofit boards. I'm trying to kick that habit. I've almost kicked it, but it's like death by 1,000 cuts. You throw an idea and it's just like, it's just this mangled, idea that goes nowhere. At least maybe I'm on the wrong nonprofit boards, but that's what's been so fun about my own projects, is I can think about something and 3 hours later it could be launched. And I'm sure you have that streak too. Sure seems like it based on some of your projects.
Yeah, I usually do. I have a hard time narrowing down my ideas to what I can actually do, which, hey, if I'm not going back to teaching next year at my school, I guess I'm going to have more time to do those. But yeah, I have more projects than I have time. And I almost want to start recruiting people. But the problem is not everybody's like us.
Right. But not everybody needs to be, though, too, because there are lots of different ways people can interface with, projects like what you do or what I do.
The important thing to remember about nonprofit boards is that they all tend to move really slowly. So you start by kind of feeding the idea, and then you have to feed the idea. And I had this idea when I was serving on our local school foundation. So the whole point of the foundation was to raise funds for student learning and achievement or whatever. And being a teacher, I said, we need to have a mini grant opportunity for professional development. So that teachers can get a sub day to go to a conference, right? They don't have to pay for that, or that they can sign up for an online conference. This is way before I started my online conference, by the way. So, but I was like, there's so many opportunities for professional development and teachers just can't afford it. And so our teachers aren't getting it because we aren't giving it to them. So if we can fundraise for that, and it took a couple of years, but now they have established a kind of a professional development scholarship grant where teachers and principals can apply to bring in somebody, and it's all funded through the foundation. It took a couple years, but I totally had my way.
That's great. I wish I had that kind of follow through. I'm the sort of person who I present something and I think, well, why isn't it happening now? And then I get exasperated and I just try to recruit someone else to do it or go do it myself.
How many children do you have, though?
0.
See? When you have children, you realize that it takes so much time for a single accomplishment to happen, and it takes constant reinforcement. Finally, my 11-year-old will wake up in the morning and shower himself without being told. You know how many years it took?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that would give me some more patience. But we'll see.
Maybe, but if you don't need it, you're all good.
Well, you were mentioning, I have to share this story with you because it's a story of pain, and it's similar along the lines of your website going down. Maybe not as well, maybe similar. So I was hired to be the social media, Facebook live streamer, all things to, online for this event in 2017, which was cool. I thought, oh, this will be great. I'll do it. And it was great. It was interesting. But what I learned doing that is you were talking about internet connectivity problems and everything. I quickly realized, oh, my role is I'm the world's internet and Facebook troubleshooter. So I had to sit there and try to tell people why they weren't able to see the thing on Facebook. It's like, look, person from South Africa, I don't even know where to begin. It could be many things. So that was fine, though. I learned that, and even though I would have the title posted, the person playing, people would get in the comments and be like, "What's this piece? Who's this person?" So my job was just sitting there, typing to people all week. Then we get to the last event. It's the finals. And we had been building this up, and we had on the Facebook stream, I think we had maybe 3,000, 4,000 people ready to go for the finals. And I had gone all out. I had this really high-end camera hooked up to my laptop for Facebook Live, mics. We had lower thirds and everything. We were ready to go. And I'm back there, and I'm ready to go with the comments. The person comes out to start to play. He plays the first note, and everything shuts down. So the camera shuts down, everything, and the camera then defaults to my laptop camera pointing at my sweaty face in the back. and I think what are we going to, and so I trying to figure out what to do. And the only thing I could think of to do was to pick up my laptop and swivel it around and point it at the performer. And as I'm doing that, I'm seeing the sea of angry Facebook faces come in from all the people who are watching. And that, because it was on Facebook Live, it's out there. It's recorded. And one day I will make it a clip on YouTube, but I don't want to embarrass the person who put the event on. But it is very funny. It's like absolutely totally cringeworthy because it's like this high-end video, and then all of a sudden swaps to me. I'm like this pixelated, greasy figure, and then you see me turning and saying Jack, what do we do? And then the thing rotates around. And so anyway, I've been there. My website hasn't gone down during a conference, but I've definitely. And when I was happening, I was just laughing because I thought this what are you gonna do?
Okay, so I totally agree with you. When I was done crying, I laugh. And I kind of hit this rule of three, 3 things go bad in a row, quick succession, then it's time to laugh. Mm-hmm. Because it releases all that great endorphins and serotonin and blah, blah, blah. There's a reason why they say laughter is the best medicine. So how often do you hit that kind of frustration, breaking point, catastrophic failure, and then laugh? Are we allowed to laugh? I feel like society looks at us laughing at these problems and they're like, okay, you're crazy because you really should be really struggling right now.
Yeah. Life's too short to struggle too much with stuff like that. Yeah. Laughter is definitely my medicine for whatever union frustration in an orchestra or teacher, bonkersness, getting banned from using a particular copier because during the week of a concert, which happened, or you name it. But yeah, that's laughter is usually my kind of go-to.
Yeah, it's just staying lighthearted and realizing that there are important things in life, but the majority of life is just not worth you getting that up in arms about, right?
Well, for me, I know that for something really big, like when my father passed away or something like that, I know, which happened 5 years ago, I know that I'm going to feel bad for a while. But for most other things in life, I lose an audition or I don't get a job or I get, let go or whatever. For me, not always, but generally it's like a day where I'm just going to feel really crappy. And I just sort of know that about myself after living with myself for 43 years. I'm just going to feel bad. And the next day I'm going to feel better and probably close to 100%. And the day after that, it's going to be the emotional sting is going to be gone from whatever that thing is. But But, you know, I've certainly not gotten a lot of things and felt down in the dumps and just frustrated, and I don't want to do a single thing. But I just sort of know that this will pass, and give it a day and I'm going to have a different perspective, and give it 2 days and I'm already going to have put it behind me. That's me.
You have some really solid coping mechanisms. What are some other good coping mechanisms that you've discovered in yourself or in your podcast guests?
Well, it's something you talk about a bit in your book. I think we're thinking along the same lines, but just do things every day to put yourself in the driver's seat. So I try to work out. No, you know, I have a morning routine that I stick to when I'm not on vacation or on the road. When I'm on vacation or on the road, I just sort of go with the flow because it's too frustrating to try to get it in. But I wake up every day. I practice Spanish. I've been doing it 251 days as of today. And I still can't speak Spanish, but I can speak it better than I could 251 days ago. And then I go to the gym. We have a gym in the building in San Francisco. So go to the gym, eat a healthy breakfast, like a real, you know, protein and fruit and just a really good breakfast. And then and there has been no checking of email and no checking of social feeds or anything till there. And then I sit down, and whenever possible, 2 hours. I use a Pomodoro timer, and I do 2 hours of creative work without checking anything online. It doesn't matter what that is. And if I do that, I get mad stuff accomplished, and I feel good, and I feel like I'm in control. And if I hop on email the moment I wake up, I find that I'm on email all day and I'm in reactive mode. If I get up and work out and take care of myself just a little bit, and while I'm eating breakfast, I read a little bit of a novel or a self-help book or something. But no, I do read, but I just read a little bit. So I'm moving through that novel, I'm practicing Spanish, working out a little bit, taking care of myself, getting something done that's important but not urgent, you know, and then I can let the chaos of the day unfold. And that's usually around 10 a.m.
Okay. So have you read The Miracle Morning?
I have not. I think maybe you mentioned it in your book.
Yeah, because it's all about that. You know, there are certain things that we know we should be doing to kind of move our needle forward, to kind of be progressing our lives, like meditation and affirmations and visualization and reading and writing and creative work and, you know, practicing Spanish, whatever it is. And why don't we get those things done? It's because we try and, you know, space it out throughout our day, or we don't schedule it in. And so his premise is if you do it all first thing in the morning, then you're most likely to get it done. Because statistically and scientifically proven, you're most motivated in the morning, which is why, you know, I listen to a lot of TED Talks too. And you'll always hear them say, if you want to establish a pattern of like exercise, do it first thing in the morning, and just do it every day, first thing in the morning. But there's a great quote by Pedram Shojai, who is the author of The Urban Monk. And he really advocates for not checking social media or, you know, email or anything like that for the first couple hours of the day. And the way he said it is exactly what you just said, which is that is totally reactive. Like that's letting other people establish your outlook for the day, because it's all external feedback coming into you. But if you put it off and establish yourself as the leader of your day, your own intentions for your actions that day, then you're actually going to like be better off.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But I never, we too often think that, you know, checking email or checking Facebook is something we do for us, but it's really other people imposing their will on us.
Yeah. It's the world's to-do list for you.
Oh yeah. I'm going to write that down. It's the world's to-do list for you instead of you for yourself. So because one of my favorite things to do, one of the things that keeps me really on track is planning my day the night before. So you have a great morning routine. I love that you shared that. What's your evening routine?
My evening routine is less organized. My wife works a very kind of typical 8 to 5 schedule. So I try to have my work, whatever it is I do that I consider work, fall in that 8 to 5 box. And we don't have kids, and so we have a different setup than a lot of people. But by the time 5's done, I'm done with, unless San Francisco Symphony calls, and then I'll go play San Francisco Symphony happily, or some gig equivalent to that. But otherwise, I don't play. I play when I'm on the road or I'm at events. But I'm trying to fit my stuff into an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday is kind of the opposite of a typical musician schedule, because musicians work when you're at night. So it's been kind of interesting. It's sort of forced me to take different projects. But so my evening routine is usually read a little bit, try to go for a walk later in the afternoon, because I start to crash out. I have no energy by the time it gets to be like 4 p.m. is not a great time for Jason. So I try to get done with my stuff 2 or 3 p.m., wrap up, tidy up, 3, 4, something like that, go out for a walk. A lot of the time I'll go meet my wife, or we'll meet at the Ferry Building in San Francisco, and then come back, make dinner, and we're early to bed. But sometimes we go see an event or something like that. So I've been thinking about ways to tidy up the day a little bit better. I've been reading a little bit about thinking about the big question. I'm forgetting who I read this from, but thinking about the big question and kind of ruminating on that at the end of your work time. And then when you wake up the next day, kind of digging into that big question, like, what's it really all about? What are you working on? I haven't done that yet. But how about you? What's your? I know you've got kids, and you have a different suite of activities than I do.
Yeah, but going back to your big question thing, I love that. I'd love to find out who you got that from, because that's like relinquishing those answers to your subconscious mind. I feel like too often we're in our prefrontal cortex, our active alpha state,
yep,
beta state. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. Oh, you know what? I remember who it is. It's okay. Josh Waitskin. It was on the most recent, as of the time we're chatting, Tim Ferriss episode. Josh Waitskin wrote The Art of Learning, and that's who I lifted that from. Perfect. I like the idea, though.
Yeah, it's a great idea, because I think we sometimes just push ourselves to try and answer those questions when our subconscious mind is far better at that anyway. So letting you sleep on it, you actually can wake up the next morning with a lot better ideas. But so, my life has been in chaos the last 6 months or so. But usually when I'm good, my evening routine is finishing up whatever work. It's hard when you're teaching full time. You can't, work for myself during the day. So often that will end up being in the evening. I'll be recording a podcast or editing or, whatever, trying to get a deadline taken care of for writing an article or whatever it is. And then we have dinner, and I usually like to play a game or read with my kids. We get them in bed about 8. And then before bed, I'd like to go through my day, plan my next day, so that I don't have to make those decisions. I really, really suffer from decision fatigue. So if I can just get all of that decided, what I'm going to wear, what I'm going to eat, what my timeline is like, what appointments I have, what time zone those appointments are in, like get all of that planned out, and what time am I going to wake up, and what's the first thing I'm going to do when I wake up, and what's my workout going to be that day. So I get all of that taken care of. And then I have a gratitude journal right next to my bed. So I write down little affirmations or things that I'm grateful for, or, things like that. And it's a totally separate book from my other journal or my planner book. So I have a big stack of books by my bed, but I'm a bibliophile, so that should be expected. And then I usually do something that they don't recommend, which is I have screen time right before bed. And so my husband and I will usually watch, aggravating political commentary until I fall asleep.
Well, we do that too. Usually not aggravating political commentary. It's usually like whatever serialized show we're on, whether it's Handmaid's Tale or who knows what, but that's our jam for sure.
Yeah. In the last summer, we every night would put the kids to bed and then watch Game of Thrones. Like, we had not watched Game of Thrones, and my husband's parents finally pushed it on us, handed us the first 7 seasons on disc, and we're like, here, partake, enjoy. And so we like binged it all summer long last year. But now we mostly stick to like Stephen Colbert on YouTube,
Sure.
stuff like that. Get caught up on our news that way. We can only handle news that's funny or a funny take on the news.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's it.
That's the way we like our news too.
Yeah, unless I'm reading a book that I'm super, super into, and then I will read until I fall asleep.
Well, it changes everybody's routine. We're reinventing ourselves all the time, like you were saying, and everybody's routine changes. I have come up with a routine just because I have, a lot of the work I do is either for myself or consulting for different companies or that sort of thing. So I've come up with a weekly routine that I really like. And let me know what you think of this. So here's my weekly routine. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, I wake up and I do that routine I was talking about. Then I go to a co-working space in San Francisco. And I really like that because it gets me out of the house. It makes me take what I'm doing a little more seriously, I think. I think the quality of what I do is higher with those given hours. And I can sit down and I just order my coffee in the app and it comes right there. And they've got big monitors. I can jack my laptop in, so I have lots of big screen real estate. And I can work at home, but I live in San Francisco, our place is small. And then I associate home with, I got to take out the trash. I got to do this, I got to do this, And so those 3 days are kind of like my computer days. And I'm usually at that co-working space from about 8 to 2 or something like that. Then I generally come home and I'm practicing bass, or I have a couple private students that come by right after school or mid-afternoon, late afternoon. And then Wednesday, I just stay home and I do all audiovisual. I record the podcast. I'm trying to record more videos, whatever, anything like that I couldn't do in a co-working space, like what we're doing would be a little awkward. So I try to do interviews, try to edit audio. And then Friday is my do whatever the heck I want day. I leave the house and I usually just bring my iPad and I might walk 10, 15 miles, stop in different coffee shops, go to a museum, go somewhere I've never been. And that's been a good way to sort of keep my battery recharged. Also, as a podcast host, you would appreciate this. There's an event at Beta Brand, the clothing store. Beta Brand has a store, maybe their headquarters, but at least a store in San Francisco. And every Thursday night, they have Beta Brand Podcast Theater. So I've been going most Thursdays to see a podcast, and it's usually a San Francisco local podcast. But it's so interesting to see people doing their show live. So I find that very inspiring.
Yeah, that is a fantastic weekly routine. And I'm glad you mentioned the co-working space, because I've kind of been toying with that idea because my office is in my home, and I love, when the kids are in school though, and it's just me at home working, that's going to be a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. And I there could be some really, beneficial things to having a co-working space. And also I wanted to point out, we're recording this on a Friday. So this is your do whatever you want day?
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm also on vacation right now. So this is my do whatever I want. And like all rules are off when I'm out of town. So I just can't, but yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. I really love having regular routines, which is exactly why I wrote my book, because everybody should be like me. I'm just joking. Everybody should be like themselves. But I look forward to establishing routines. I just got back from, 4 or 5 days on vacation, and I'm looking forward to just getting back in my groove again, in time to go on another vacation. I mean, vacation to a conference.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then another conference. And anyway.
Wow. Okay. So there's no way we could even, and I knew this before we got on the line, there's no way we could even begin to scratch the surface on stuff for us to talk about. So I would love to do a round 2 with you at some point, and it could be about anything, or about a topic, or when the next Music Ed Summit's coming up, or whatever. Or I'll bet, we were at TMEA together. I'll bet it's likely we'll be at some conference together. I'll be at the Midwest Clinic. I'll be at Maryland MEA. I think I'll be at TMEA again. I'll be at a bunch of others. So we should definitely do something. We should do a round 2 at some point.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Do you go to the NAMM show?
Yeah, I go to the NAMM show in January. Do you go to the NAMM show, or will
I
you
am
be?
going to go to the NAMM show.
Okay, well, let's meet up. Let's at least, it's July right now. Let's at least meet up then. I'll be there. I work for Eastman Strings. That's one of my hats, and so I'll be there for Eastman. And it would be fun to do something. That is such a crazy show.
Do you know Ryan Richmond?
Oh yeah, I know Ryan. Yes, absolutely. He's the VP of Eastman. Yeah, Ryan's great.
Nice. Of course, he's from Utah. Yep. And so I've known Ryan since, he worked in a music store. We both worked in music stores at like the same time. And at one point, I think he was my educational rep. And then his wife, Rochelle, is a music teacher as well. And yeah, they are outstanding people. I absolutely adore them. And then Matt Reynolds, do you know him?
Mm-hmm. I know Matt. Yep. It is a small world. Yep.
Yeah. So his wife, Sonia, and I are both horn players. We've played together and we worked in the music store together. And I knew Matt when he was teaching high school and stuff. So.
Well, yeah, and Matt's now regional sales manager for this huge swath of territory. He lives, I think, in Utah still, but he's in Oregon and Washington. I'm actually going out for Matt when school starts, September, October, up to Oregon. So I'm sure our paths will cross in person sometime soon. But it would be fun to do. I am down for anything. I was thinking, should we have a plan? But I thought I knew whatever we talk about would be interesting. So
yeah, and I started by crying. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please. I wish more people would cry on my podcast or on your or however whatever this is we're doing.
Like I even had a dream last night about my grandma, and so like I'm already so tender, and I think it's okay. You know, it was several weeks ago. And I realized my own massive inadequacy. I was talking to my friend Scott Burstein from Little Kids Rock. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, I've served on nonprofit boards, and Little Kids Rock is a nonprofit, and I don't currently serve on a board. You know, could I be a board member? Or, what's that process like? And he's like, no, you can't. It's like minimum $1 million fundraising and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I am so out of my league here. And so I came home and posted on Facebook just like, sometimes I feel so incredibly inadequate. And apparently I project like this massive confidence and whatever. And so I went to my community band later that week, and at the end of band, and this was when I was playing horn, I wasn't the conductor for this particular conference cycle or concert cycle. And one of the saxophone players came up and she gave me this big hug. And she's like, I saw your post about feeling inadequate. And I just wanted to let you know that it made me feel okay about myself, knowing that one of the most beautiful, confident, smart people that I know feels inadequate sometimes. So if my inadequacy and my emotional tenderness right now and my laughing at struggles can help other people, then so be it. I'll be human for y'all. How about that?
Elisa, thanks for chatting. And we've got her linked up in the show notes, but the website is elisajanson.com, where you can learn about her many projects, from travel photography to education to all sorts of things. And I just love her creative mind. I could tell when I find a kindred spirit who's loving to explore multiple disciplines, and she is certainly that. So this was a fun one for me. Hopefully you enjoyed it too. And I'd love to hear from you about this or any episode or any guest suggestion. And as you just heard today, does not have to be bass related. We've had a lot of non-bass players on here. Feedback at contrabassconversations.com will put you in touch with me. Contrabass Conversations is produced by Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, and Mitch Mooring. And Mitch is making beautiful basses, doing great string work in the Dallas area in downtown Kilgore, Texas. Look him up at mitchmooring.com. And by the way, he's an award-winning bassist, won a silver medal for tone at the ISB 2019 convention. Thank you also to Krista Copper for archiving and cataloging everything we do here on the podcast. So valuable going forward. And I'm your host, Jason Heath. We will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.